Welcome to Cattle Call, an original production of the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. I'm Chad Moyer, and Cattle Call is brought to you by Wolf Auto, Small Town Strong. Check out their website, wolfauto.com. Check the inventory and availability and all of that good stuff again at their website. Joining me once again today, it's Brad Kooima, K0oima and Varilek at Sioux Center, Iowa, as we break down the markets again here this week. And boy, what an interesting week last week from when we talked a week ago to when we finally finished out the trade. It is interesting to me that the North seems willing to trade cattle early in the week, but they're dragging their feet in the South. What's going on between the two regions right now, Brad?
Hey, that's a very intuitive question. Thanks for having me on, Chad. And I think it has to do with maybe a bit of a, well, more than a bit. You talk about, the overall supply, but you really, to appreciate it, there's a terrific regional imbalance in supply is what I'm trying to say. A regional imbalance that's largely created by the fact that the Mexican border has been closed for almost a year now. So you're looking at a situation here in the North where for quite a stretch here, and you and I have been on this, doing this program for a while now, we've talked about, what is the guy's perspective here as we got to late summer? The guy in the North, he's going like, man, these feeder cattle are high. Market goes up every, we've been this solid uptrend. And, I actually could take a little less for these big cattle, these live cattle, fat cattle, because I can't, I'm trading in a terrible high price break, even if I sell what I got and replace them with some high price feeder cattle. So the temptation was very real to hang on to what you had and make them a little bit bigger. Understandable. And I think that in some cases is what's happened. And you have the whole seasonal thing that's kind of the MO of a farmer feeder. Well, he's going to buy a calf. It's going to weigh 550 pounds. He's going to feed it for 11 months, and he's going to see what it looks like when we get here to November or whatever. And that's where we're at. So what I'm saying is that the South has more leverage. I'm not saying that we've got a huge supply problem in the North. I don't mean to give that perception, but we're not nearly as tight as they are in the South either. So I think you might have a little more of a willing seller in the North, cattle that still make some money here at these price levels. The South may be just a little more stubborn because they can see all the empty pens they've got, Chad.
Yeah. What do you think the status is now in terms of currentness in the North and in the South? Kind of expand on that, because I have noticed here, I think it was about 20 or 25% of the cattle from last week were booked for extended delivery. And it was a pretty low number the week before that too, if memory serves me. But are we pretty current? Are they needing cattle kind of close to the knife these days?
Well, that's a very good question. And if I could get one great answer, I work hard at that this is hard to know, but so there's, for instance, last week's slaughter was 560,000. The week before was 559,000. A year ago it was 621,000. We are killing a lot less than a year ago. So, one listener is going to say, yeah, well, Brad, that's all the cattle we got. Possibly, or are we just making them bigger? I think from a regional standpoint, I think the North is without a doubt making cattle bigger than they typically do. I've had plenty of guys tell me about, well, I bought these cattle for this price, and if I make them weigh 1,700 pounds, they break even at this. And I'm going like, well, 1,700. We're building that into our ration from day one. I feed cattle too, but that does seem to, that's something I haven't heard. I would say, and if you look at the average weights, it's not as bad as it was, but we're still easily, 20 pounds over a year ago on carcass weight. So that'd be another indicator that, not great. But some of this, of course, is pushed by the packer. There's less overall supply. So we're trying to maintain beef production levels. Well, if you got less cattle, you better make them bigger to try to come up with those, a few more pounds. I don't see that it's bad enough that we've lost our leverage, Chad, but this is going to a place maybe where you're not asking the question, but people ask me like, what do you, and I'll get to this here when we're later on about when we go into the springtime or into the early winter or late winter. What happens if we're not at 250 where these big cattle that they bought, these yearling cattle, where they break even at? What if it's like today where it's 225, 227, something like that? We'll see how current we stay then. I don't know if you were broadcasting when the through 2015 on the cattle market. But that's when we lost currentness, and it didn't get better for a year and a half. I mean, we had to get all the way to December of 16 before it cleaned up. So that's out there. We got to pay attention. We got to try to stay a little more current than we are right now.
Okay. Now you brought up something, and maybe we can go right to our first listener question here, and this one has to do with, where we stand and how things could look in the future, and is it going to affect processing capacity? So, with pressure from the administration to bring prices down, shortage of cattle, we were talking about that. If the cow herd doesn't rebuild quickly, how long before we lose some packing space and maybe lose some of those shackles, maybe shutter a plant? Is that a concern? Is that something that the beef industry is dealing with right now?
Well, I think certainly it's a concern, but I'll answer this as best I can, because I lived through Denison, Iowa, the Tyson plant, Plainview, the Cargill plant in Texas. So it's not without precedent. It's not unrealistic for someone to ask this kind of a question. However, I do not get that vibe at all, that's in the works now. I probably won't either. I know from, the 9:30 in, maybe having a cocktail a commentary of the Plainview one, for instance. Nobody knew that one. I mean, and they're not gonna telegraph it if it happens. So I mean, it's going to be very difficult to anticipate, and impossible, in fact. But I don't get that sense anywhere now. Would there be a cow killer plant way in the east or someplace, or way on the fringe of where there's barely cattle to begin with, and certainly aren't any enough now? Could something like that happen? I'm talking about more of an insignificant plant that kills maybe less than 1,000 a day or something like that. I'd say that's a possibility. I think right now the battle, though, between the big four is that they don't want to lose market share, and so they're kind of dug in here to try to suck it up and get through this shortage of cattle and get into where there's a few more again. But yeah, that's not anytime soon. So yeah, I don't see it in the near term. But again, you'd have to be a fortune teller to see once that they're going to do it. But that's not the vibe we're getting from the people I talk to.
Sure. And I think the situation might be a little different. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like the attitude is different when you've added sustainable beef out in North Platte, and some of these small regional ones picking up a little bit here. The attitude is, and of course we have one still sitting on the back burner just on the Missouri River here. The attitude is maybe a little bit different than it was 10, 11 years ago, right?
Absolutely. The irony is not lost. That when we went into our tightest supply, that's when some of these people thought it'd be a great idea to add capacity. I mean, it's like, really? But now I should say this, though, too. The Packers making money today. So before we start, sending out a litany of sympathy cards for them, I mean, the way they flipped this thing since all this dialogue out of Washington started 3 weeks ago, that's what's changed. The producer's getting a lot less. The box beef is about $7 higher now than what it was back then, and the Packers got his margin back. I mean, I've got to count to 10 before because it's exasperating, this last little spell here that we went through. What happened to the producer? It's not the cow calf guy's fault that hamburger cost $8. It's not my fault that Costco's charging too much for a ribeye, in somebody's opinion. It's just let the market do the market's job, and hopefully we can get back to that very, very soon, I hope.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the next question that we had from a listener. And this kind of goes to something that you alluded to earlier before. Again, based on all the circumstances that we have going on, what do the marketing prospects look like when we get to, like you said, late winter, early spring? How could this all play out based on what we know right now?
Question I ask myself every day, of course. And I got to give the disclaimer, and that's always, barring the black swan, right? Barring some other comment or some other whatever function of what happens, out at Washington, D.C. or something that we can't even really anticipate, right? So we've poured this into the marketplace, right? This last round of narrative about the beef's too high. we're fully expecting. I might even hear today that we're going to roll back the tariffs on Brazil so that the grinding meat can come in. And then to me, the gorilla in the room is still the Mexican border. And they're going to open it. Let's get it over with so we can get on down the road. So all of that. But to this guy's question or this person's question, I don't think that there's anything that they can do to change appreciably the supply of fat cattle in the first quarter of next year. Okay. You could open the border tomorrow, and I don't think they're going to bring 1,000-pound cattle in. We'll find out when they open it, but I would expect it'll be those cattle are all placed in a feed yard. They figured out what they're going to do with them. They'll go back to what they used to do, which is placing flyweight cattle, in my opinion. So I don't see how you can change the supply. So what I'm trying to say is, barring some sort of real demand wreck, I think that the supply fundamentals are in place that we could go to all-time highs. Now, maybe it's cash. Maybe you've poisoned the long speculator to the point where he may be a little bit slow to jump on board with all this stuff, so you could do what we did last year, Chad, where we had basis at 10 over or something. Let's say hypothetically you get the cash back to 245. Could you still have fed cattle at 235, which is quite a bit higher than it is today? Possibly. So I think that that's what's going to happen again. The basis is going to get weak again, or however you want to describe it when you talk about cash being above futures, and which is a good thing, which would have a tendency to keep us more current. But I think because of what the long speculators had to deal with here the last little while, I could see where he may have maybe a little less reluctant to jump back in the water again.
So if the die is kind of cast for at least, let's say the first half of next year, are we talking protection strategies? Should we go out? Should we, I don't know, would we think about a put? Would we think about something to protect prices out there if we kind of have an idea of how things are going to play out for a few months?
I'm laying off risk in the deferreds. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this exactly on this show, but when you get to June, August, October cattle, where you have a chance either to lose your currentness or have a few more cattle around you. I worry most about losing our currentness. I really do. It wouldn't be the first time that we fed our way right into a problem. You don't place your way to a problem. You feed your way to it. Okay. So that's the problem. And in the first quarter of the year, I'm not going to say you throw your risk management tools out the window, but maybe you use risk management tools that give you some upside potential, such as a put option, okay, or a combination of that. But frankly, there's all kinds of cattle that were bought for that first quarter that have never had day one chances of being laid off. At 250 break even, we've never been to 250. So that it's going to be interesting to watch that play out. And a lot of money's been made in the feedlot sector here, a lot. So some of these guys I think are already accepting the idea that they're going to give some of it back. So we'll see how that plays out. But the trick to the deal from a marketing standpoint is how current do we stay going through that period. That'll determine largely what August, October, that slot does then.
All right. Just as we wrap up here today, haven't seen much trade as we're recording this, at least right now. What are your thoughts of how things might play out for this week?
There was just a little bit of trade in my backyard yesterday afternoon at 227, which would be lower than the beginning of the week, but maybe better than last Friday. I know there was some cattle traded last Friday at 225. I'm going to take a shot here that the auctions so far this week have not been great at all. I don't know. I hope it's better than 225, but I'm not positive it's going to be. I guess if I was bid 228, I'd probably send them down the road. We'll see. I'm going to say I'm hoping it's a little better than the 225. Someplace between 25 and 28, I guess, maybe is where I'm expecting the North to be.
All right. Very good. We've covered a lot of different things here. And if you have a question for Brad, be sure and put that in the comments below. We'll come back and ask that question. We'll talk about it on future, on future cattle call programs. In the meantime, Brad, if folks want to reach out, they can certainly do that, right? What's contact information?
Best way is we would prefer if you'd call 712-722-0023. It's always nice to talk. Otherwise, kkvtrading.com. You can learn a little bit more about us there too.
Always good to talk to you. Thank you, Brad. We'll see you next week. Again, that's Brad Kooima and Varilek at Sioux Center, Iowa, as we record today's cattle call program. Again, it's brought to you by Wolf Auto, Small Town Strong. Thanks for joining us on this week's cattle call program. Have a great week. We'll see you next week on Cattle Call.